Hi, I'm Jamie Lewis, and welcome back to thebassist.net. We're starting week number 4 in our quest called Game of Tones, and today we're answering the question, should I go direct or should I mic up a cab? But before we get too far into that, there's a link popping up right now. There's still time to get in on the pre-sale pricing for the limited run anniversary vinyl pressing of When Will Then Be Now, my first album that came out 5 years ago. There's still time to get in on the discounted pricing and all the free goodies that come with it, so make sure you check that out. So first of all, just what do I mean by going direct versus miking a cab? Well, if you don't know, as a bass player, there's a few different ways to get signal from you. I can put a microphone on the cabinet like you see over here. I've got an Electro Voice RE20, which is a fantastic classic dynamic microphone that has no proximity effects, so you can get it right up there. It's a great mic if you're gonna mic up your cab. So you could put a mic in front of it, or you can do what's called going direct, which most amplifiers these days have an XLR output. You can see on the Tone Hammer 500, there is an XLR output. You could also have a aftermarket DI box like the A Designs Ready or the Radial JDI or any number of DI boxes where they can just take a sound directly from your bass before it gets processed by your amplifier.
So, why would the bass player want to go direct?
Well, quite simply, it's the easiest way to get a sound from you, and it's also the cleanest. You don't have to worry about someone walking by and knocking over your mic stand, and then we can't hear you anymore. You don't have to worry about a microphone coloring and changing your sound, which it will. Every microphone does. You don't have to worry about signal bleed. You know, if there was a drummer right next to me, this microphone's picking up my bass, but it's also picking up cymbals and snares and all the other stuff. And you wouldn't have to worry about signal degradation from poor microphone technique, which if you're not an engineer, it's not as simple as, oh, just put the microphone, it sounds good. There's a technique to it. There's a lot of different ways to get a good tone using a microphone. And going direct, again, it's just easy. Plug in and you're set. Nothing else you have to do. And going direct also captures your full signal. In other words, a microphone has a polar pattern and a very specific frequency range that it's capable of picking up. The DI is 100% every sound you're making. The same thing as going to your amp is going to the front of house, or it's going to your mixing console, or it's going to Pro Tools, it's going to tape. 100% of the information is being transferred.
Then why bother setting up a microphone if a DI is so much better?
Well, I said it was the easiest and it was the cleanest. I didn't say it was the best. Because keep in mind, when you play your bass, right, you plug it into an amp, it gets interpreted by the amplifier, it gets colored by whatever tubes or transformers or whatever's inside the box, EQ, and then it comes out through those speakers. And like we talked about last week, those speakers will color your sound. Are they 10s? Are they 15s? Are they 12s? Right? And then there's distance between you and the amp. That's also some coloration, right? If I'm 5 feet away from my amp, or if the amp is pointed away from me, or if it's pointed at my legs, all of those things affect how I hear my bass. And what I end up hearing is not actually the sound of the bass itself. But when you play with in-ear monitors, right? When you just got these things that are shoved all the way inside your ears, I did a video on that a couple of weeks ago. When you're doing, if you're just going in direct and you're hearing yourself out of the studio monitors or out of the stage wedges, it sounds different. It sounds different because, again, we're bypassing all of that stuff. You're hearing your sound unbiased, uncolored, untreated, uncorrected, and sometimes it's really undesirable. I can tell you this for myself, and I've heard it from many other bass players too, who go direct all the time, who use in-ear monitors and hear their bass in this weird way. The thing that we hate about it is it feels so lifeless. Or maybe not lifeless, maybe sterile is the word, like clean. So clean, too clean, perfectly clean, like operating room clean. Take a listen, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now you might notice these things, again, just hearing them from the studio monitors in the recording studio, or, you know, if you're using wedges, but you'll especially notice this sterile sound when you use in-ear monitors. And I can think of 2 reasons for this. One is just the immediacy of the sound. There was no distance. My amp, I'm not standing with my ear right next to the speaker cone. There's some space between us, and so there's some feel. The room reacts to it, and you don't get that. It's just boom, right into your ears. So that's kind of strange. And the other thing is the excess of top end. Your speaker cabinets can't reproduce the kind of frequencies that your in-ears can because they get muddied up by the low-end frequencies. So you're hearing a lot more of this crisp top end that your amp can't actually reproduce. Things like fret buzz, finger slides, or just the tic-tac sounds that your finger makes when it touches the strings, all of that becomes much more noticeable.
Can't you just fix that with processing?
Totally, and we do this all the time. You can use corrective EQ or surgical EQ. We'll talk about that next week to roll off all of the top end to get rid of all the, that clickety clack I was just talking about. That's called a low pass filter. You can use some slight overdrive either by just cranking the preamp a little bit or plugging into an overdrive pedal to kind of emulate some of that tube saturation. I mean, that can totally help out. Amp sims are great. Amplifier simulators like the Universal Audio Ampeg SVT or Amplitude is another company, or Logic, whatever. They've all got their amp sims built in. Or you can just plug into any other type of effects pedal to just, create some different sounds or, boost up the low end or just do whatever. So, I mean, yes, there are ways that you can take your DI track that's very dry and very lifeless and add life to it, which again, that's kind of what's so rad about it. Because it's so clean, you can morph it a bunch of different ways and not really have to worry about degradation, unless you're processing it poorly. But there's another way that we can add life to our DI track, and that's by adding in a mic'd cabinet. Your amplifier, as I mentioned previously, is coloring your sound. Not just the amp, not just the speakers, not just the speaker sizes, not just the distance, not just the air, but the microphone and the room and everything. And all of those are very pleasing to our ears. Most of us have played bass our whole lives through an amplifier, and so we know what those sounds are. We know what kind of characteristic it makes. So throw up a microphone, capture those things.
But I thought you said microphones were a no-no.
Well, while microphones aren't as easy or as clean as, say, plugging in direct, they do have character. Again, the microphone has a specific EQ curve and a specific polar pattern and a very unique sound to it, just like your amplifier does and just like your speaker cabinets. So it's yet another variable to throw in the mix and capture your sound in a really cool way. So here's the way I do it. I use each of these, going direct and miking up a cab, specifically for the benefits that they offer. The DI is clean, so I can get a pristine, perfect low end. I'll roll off all the highs, I'll compress it, right? And I'll just get this massive, beautiful low end that just won't go away no matter where I am on the instrument. And then I'll use the amplifier for some character. I'll boost out the mid-range, I'll drive the tubes a little bit harder, or I'll just, same thing, I'll play with the mic to just get a really interesting sound and then blend those two together, and you've got the raddest sounding bass you've ever heard.
I've heard that this creates terrible phase issues.
Yeah, it does. And here's the reason why. Your DI signal is instantaneous. The moment I strike the string, the DI sends the signal to the tape or to the front of house, and you get exactly what I played when I played it. However, the microphone picks up your sound after it comes out of your amp, which takes time for the sound to leave the speaker and then hit the microphone. Kind of like watching fireworks. When you watch them go up in the sky, they go boom, and you hear the boom after you see the explosion, unless you're really, really close to them. And the reason is because the speed of sound is not the same as the speed of electricity. So even though you played the note and both of them picked it up at the same time, theoretically, the microphone is a fraction of a second, sometimes milliseconds, behind the DI signal. And when you have one transient that starts here and then one that starts here, and they go like this together, you run into what's called a phase effect. Or if you've ever plugged into a phase pedal or a chorus pedal, it's exactly what's happening. It's doubling up your sound and lining it up with each other, or, kind of offsetting a little bit, and it creates this really weird effect. Now, sometimes, again, plugging into a phaser pedal or a chorus pedal, this effect is desired. Most of the time it's not. For if you're just playing bass and you just want to record a good sound, you don't want to have this phase effect happening, because instead of having this big, strong low end, you're going to have a really weak, weird, kind of wishy-washy sound. You don't want that. But you can work around this in a few different ways. In a live scenario, if you're blending these two signals, you can roll off the top end of one and roll off the low end of another, meaning roll off the lows of your cab, roll off the highs of your DI. And that way you don't have so many of the frequencies crossing over into each other. That's one way you can do it. The closer you get the microphone to the speaker, the less of a delay you're going to have, obviously. Lots of companies are making plugins that handle this. Waves makes a fantastic one called In Phase. I use it all the time when I'm blending guitar mics and bass cab and DI and that kind of stuff. It's a really rad plugin. In fact, I did a video on this. If you remember here at thebassist.net, click on this link that's popping up right now, and it's going to take you to a video that'll help you do this in Pro Tools in a recording scenario. Let me give you an example of what this sounds like. I'll play the same passage that I did before, but this time, instead of it being a DI or a cab, it's going to be both of them together at the same time. I'm not going to do any processing to it. And then take a listen for just kind of that weird phasey sound that I'm talking about. Right here, check this out. So I'm sure you hear what I'm talking about. It sounds weird. It's not strong. It's got a weak low end, and it shouldn't be, because I got this big bottom from the DI, and I've also got this great character from the amp, and they're button heads with each other. So let me show you what it sounds like when I fix it with processing. That made a huge difference, right? The bottom end all of a sudden showed up, which I'm getting from the DI, and it's compressed and it's full and it's awesome. And then I've got this fantastic mid-range punch that I'm getting from the microphone track. And my amp is hot. It's a little bit overdriven. It's a really, really cool sound. And both of those are now working together. So there you have it. You can achieve a great tone using both of these concepts. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Or it can be one or the other. You can just use the straight up DI sound. There's tons of times where that's the one I go for because it sounds right in the song, because I want a clean, perfect, pristine sound. But then there's other times when I just take the mic only because it's got this nasty rawness to it that I think is really cool. So, I like everything. It just totally depends on the song, what the band or the artist or the producer wants, just whatever's appropriate for that scenario. So I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't yet, please check out thebassist.net and look at our membership tiers. I made them as affordable as I possibly could. I cut all the costs down to make sure you guys get the best value. So thank you so much for your support, and I hope to see you there. Come back next week as we continue on this quest called Game of Tones. I'll see you then. Hey, if you like what I do, please click on the subscribe button right here. And if you really like what I do, then click over here to see how affordable it is to join me at thebassist.net. But if you just want the free stuff, then click here to check out whatever YouTube's sophisticated robots think you should watch next. I'm sure they know what's best for you.